Recording.
So for today, plan on picking up where we left off. We went over the class for subnetting, which is where when you're subnetting, you're pretty much all your networks is going to have the same amount of hosts. So you start with your classless, and then classless it wastes a lot of address. So the second half of chapter 11, we're going to VLSM. That's where you're going to subnet to meet your requirements, as if for especially like on your WAN links. So you want to always subnet to meet your requirements. In some cases, I have seen where some organizations will subnet and then they always leave a little room for growth. So that's something that you'll see done also. But here in the classes here, most of the exercises you're gonna subnet to the closest, whatever the amount of hosts that it asks you to provide. And let me share my screen real quick. And also another quick note for those of you that may be a little bit ahead, if you happen to do, I think it was 11, 10, 1. I'm not sure if Earl is on here. I know he spotted it out for me the other day. But I think it's 11, 10, 1. It's gonna give you, it's one of those exercises that we always have issues with. So with 11, 10, 1, it's going to provide you, depending on which version you get, it could be the one that is grading kind of backwards. What it's asking you for and what it's grading for is flipped backwards. And I think haven't too many people had issues with it, but it's just luck of the draw, depending on which version you get. I'm gonna open it up real quick here. So this is the 11.10.1, and what happens is it goes through and have you to fill out the sheet for your addressing scheme and the amount of hosts required for each network. But what happens is when you go into your check results, under your assessment items, when you configure everything and you address the devices according to the descriptions, pretty much you'll notice that it may not be taking your IP address on the router here. It may not be taking your IP address on the router. So Earl spotted it out the other day. I haven't noticed it. So I just wanted to let everyone know in case you get to this exercise and you're reevaluating yourself, especially your subnetting. More than likely you got your subnetting correct. It's just grading for the opposite. So to test it out, if you switch the IP addresses for the interface, usually it'll grade correct. But I just wanted to let everyone be aware of that one. And I plan on going back, putting a note there. Yes. Yep. So that's what happens. And I see Eddie, you say you had the same thing happen. So that's one of the issues that and it's just always with those particular activities, the ones where they kind of have it created to where in a classroom setting, it'll be a little bit harder for students to maybe cheat off each other because they may not have the same particular lab. So, which I understand it, but sometimes it's more trouble than it's worth. So we finished up this class for subnetting. So I want to go over some of the, and before we start, anyone have any other questions or anything about anything? Okay. So I want to go over the 7 holy steps of subnetting. I know Kelly has a video here, and what I've went and done is, how you doing, bro?
Hey everybody, how's everybody? Go right ahead, and I'll answer, jump in if need to.
Okay, I'm just gonna go over the 7 holy steps of subnetting.
All right.
And if I leave out anything, Brian, just feel free to come in and correct me or anything.
I will not correct you.
No, you're good. So what Kelly has is 7 holy steps of subnetting. And I think this diagram here is real good just for the beginners learning to subnet. So it breaks it down into step form to where after you get good with the steps, then basically you'll be able to just start doing those same steps. Instead of writing it out, you'll be doing it in your head. So this is one of the sheets I always use with my students. And I just went through his video and created my own sheet here off of the steps that he had. So pretty much you're going to start out with whatever network you're given. So one way to tell your networks is, I wonder why I closed Packet Tracer. Open back up here. So one way to tell your networks is, we know that router separates networks. So if you're looking at a diagram, and sometimes if you're in a classroom setting, what I would usually do sometimes is come in and draw a diagram on the board and then have my students go and create it and have them to subnet it. So if you're looking at a diagram such as here, and let's say we got, let me pull a 2960 here. Let's put 2960 here. And look at PC here and PC here. Sorry, it's not even on left-handed, so things look kind of slanted to me a little bit. So we have a connection here. Let's go to Ethernet 1. Connection here. So from looking at the diagram and understanding that your router is what's going to separate your networks. So looking at this diagram, we see that we have 2 connections coming from the router. So just looking at it, we're going to know if we're subnetting a certain network, we're going to need 2 networks here. So we're going to need a network for here and a network for this interface here. Then everything from the network here, we'll use the addresses inside that network to assign to the switch and then assign to the PC. Then the same thing for the other side here. So that's one quick way to be able to tell how many networks you may need. Then if it was another router here, per se, was another router and you had your, let's say you had a connection here. Oh, I clicked the wrong thing. My bad. Well, you get what the picture was saying. I don't know, the packet trace is not adding career. I probably need to add another week in there. But if you had another router connected, and if you had more interfaces, then the network between here, this connection would also be another network. As you get into your verbal link subnetting, you're going to start seeing where from your point-to-point networks here, your connections, you'll see where we're going to be using /30. And that's because it's going to waste the least amount of addresses. On your /30, you're only going to have 2 available addresses. So you have one on this interface, one on that interface. And then that way you won't waste a lot of addresses. So if we're looking at this network, I just had it here, we're saying that we're going to need 2 networks. Let's just start with the IP address of 192.168.10.0/24. And we're gonna look at the first step, determine the number of needed subnets. We determined that from looking at that diagram, we need 2 subnets. So now it's saying here, you're gonna write out your host bits. So writing out our host bits, we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And what I'm doing is I'm writing out this octet here, this last octet, because this is where our host bits are gonna be. Because we're right now looking at this network here, we have a /24, which means that this 192.168.10 is our network portion, and the .0 here is going to be our host portion. So you write out your host bits, and I'm writing that out in binary here. And then it says you're going to determine the number of bits you must borrow to get the equal number of needed subnets. And the equation that we use here is 2 to the power of n is going to equal your usable subnets. Then n is going to be your number of borrowed bits. So we said we needed 2 subnets. So if you're looking at I always use this chart here, the powers of 2. If I wanted to create 2 subnets, so it's showing here, I need to borrow 1 bit, and that'll give me 2 subnets. So 2 to the power of 1, where 1 is taking the place of n, it's going to give me 2. So I need to borrow 1 bit. So we need to borrow 1 bit here. Then it says you're going to turn on the number of bits you must borrow from step 3 and find the decimal value of that octet. So from step 3, we determined we need to borrow 1 bit. So here's the octet we're working from. I'm gonna turn on 1 bit. And then the decimal value of that is going to be 128. So how did I get the decimal value? As we stated earlier, that each octet has placeholder values of, I think it's a base 2, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, base 2. And
Yep.
you have those placeholder values. They go by the equivalents of 128, then 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, and 1. So what I did, I turned on 1 bit here, and then the rest of them here is going to be the 0. So those are my placeholder values. And then when I convert this binary to decimal, it equals 128. If I had another 1 here, it will equal 128 plus 64. So when I convert it, it'll be 192. So we have that. So now I'm going to figure out my new subnet mask by adding the decimal value from step 4 we have here to the default subnet mask. So our default subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. And we know that because I have the CIDR notation, which is a short form way of, instead of writing out that whole subnet mask, I got the CIDR notation of 24 here that lets you know that we have 24 bits turned on. So we're going to add this decimal value to this subnet mask. So we're still going to have 255.255.255. Then we're going to add this decimal value that we have here. So it's going to be 128. So now our new subnet mask is 255.255.255.128. And this goes from a /24 to now we're working with a /25 because we borrowed 1 bit. So step 6, you want to find the value of the least high order bit turned on in each octet. And this is going to be your host subnet variable. So to find our variable, we only borrowed 1 bit. So we turned on 1 bit. And we already know the decimal equivalent to that is 128. So that's going to be our value, our variable. And also you may hear it referred to as your magic number. in the curriculum that they go by and show you the way of doing it with the magic number, but your magic number and your variable is interchangeable. So that means the same. So our variable 128. So now using our variable from step 6, we're going to find our subnet range. So our network, like I say, we have 192.168.10.0. So our variable is 128. So that's going to be the amount we increase by when we go to our next network. So then we're going to determine our first usable address. It's going to be 192.168.10.1. Our last usable is going to be 192.168.10.126. And then we're going to have our broadcast. Remember that broadcast address? That is the address that's used on the network to communicate to all devices. That's going to be your one to all. Then, you know, we went over multicast, which is one to many. Unicast is going to be that one-to-one conversation. And our broadcast is going to be 127. So one thing with subnetting is it's easy to get confused, especially for me, because it depends on the way I write it out on paper. Because sometimes I write it out and my writing gets sloppy and I don't know, I've been a lost place, I've been miscounted. So usually if I'm writing it out, I use the same format. I write out my network, my first usable address, my last usable address, and my broadcast. And the reason I do that because I know that, yes, these sessions will be available. So the reason I do that is I know that my variable is 128. So to me, I know that everything should line up. By lining up, I mean that looking at my network is 10, and I know that my first usable is going to be 1 up from this 10.0. So you add 1, you're going to have 10.1. And I can look at this, my variable of my next network, and I can know that, okay, if I subtract 1 from that, that's going to be my broadcast. So when we subtract 1 from here, you got your broadcast. Then I know if I subtract 1 from that broadcast, I'm going to have my last usable address. So now I have our network here, and then we can go ahead and create the last subnet. 192.168.10.129 and 192.168.10. That's going to be 254. And then our last usable is going to 192.168.10.255. So that's going to be our broadcast here. So usually whenever I start subnetting, and I do the same thing with variable length subnetting, because with variable length, you're pretty much going to start off doing classful. But then once you get that first subnet, then you're going to use, I write an extra subnet, and then you're just going to start over and subnet this subnet to create your needs for your network. Anyone have any questions on it? Or you want to go through and do it?
Yeah, just so I can visualize it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Could you do one with 3 subnets? I think that'll kind of
Okay. So okay, so we need 3 subnets. So we're gonna need 3 subnets. We're gonna write out our host bits. Host bits, you're looking at the network that you're given with your subnet mask, and our host bits is gonna be in this last octet. So I'm gonna write those out. So now you're gonna determine the number of bits you must borrow to get the number of needed subnets. So we need 3 subnets. So if I'm looking at this chart here, and I know that we need 3 subnets. So I'm looking, okay, I can't fit 3 subnets into borrowing 1 bit. We only could create 2 subnets. So if I borrow 2 bits, I can create 4 subnets. So I can fit those 3 subnets by borrowing 2, because 3 can go in the 4. So this would be the best choice to go with. And we would just have 1 subnet left over for future use. So we're going to borrow 2 bits. So we need to borrow 2. Okay, so now we're going to turn on the number of bits we need to borrow from step 3. Then we're going to find that decimal value. So we're borrowing 2 bits. We need 1, 2. So we turned on the 2 bits. Now we need the decimal value of that. That decimal value we're going to get from adding up here. So you have this, and we just borrowed 2 bits. So we got those 2 bits. We're going to add 128 plus 64, which is going to give us 192. So now this decimal value is 192. Okay. So now we're going to move to step 5. We're going to figure out our new subnet mask by adding that decimal value from step 4 to the default subnet mask. Okay, so our default subnet mask, since this is we're using CIDR notation, and if we wanted to write it out, that's our default. So we need to take this default and add the decimal value we just came up with to that mask. So we're going 255.255.255.192. So now, instead of us working with a /24 network, we borrowed 2 bits. So now our network is /26. And we got your 2 bits here, because all of these in the first 3 octets, they're turned on, so they're all 1s. So that's 24, and we just borrowed 2. That's going to make 26. So going to the next step, we're going to find our variable. So your variable is always going to be the last bit you turned on. Also, it's going to be called your magic number also. So our magic number here, our variable, is 64, because this is the last bit that we borrowed. Okay. So our variable, 64. Okay, so we know our variable, we know our new subnet mask. So now we can go in and start creating our subnets. So you're always gonna start with this. The only thing that's changed on it is our mask on it. So this is still gonna be our starting network. So we're gonna go 192.168.10.0. Then our first address is always going to be add 1 to that network. 192.168.10.1. Then we have our last usable. Remember, our variable is 64. And also, if it helps, you can go ahead and put your second network already here, because we know that's going to be 64. And then it's going to make it easier to figure out everything else. Then our broadcast is going to be and now we can go into our second network. Then if we can create 4 networks, so we can even go up to 192.10. And it's 128. Correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't graduate from math. And then we can add 64 here. Oh, 96, my bad. Um,
192.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at the chat. I saw 96, and I had to double think that.
It should be 128. I'm sorry. Am I wrong?
Yeah, 64, 128, 192.
Yeah, so now we have the 4 networks that we can create. And we can't make no more networks, because if we try to add 64 to 192, it's going to be over 255. So our subnet mask, the highest you can go is 255, because if we add all these together, we're getting 255. So now we can just go here, 192.168.10.65.
And Michael, would you write the last one out? Because that last one will also help you find the broadcast address of the last address, right? Or the last
Yes.
network. So it would be 192.168.10.255, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So you got 10 dot, here we're going to do 126, and then your broadcast 192.168.10.127.
And as you're going through this, Michael, one thing
Yeah.
that you're gonna see different ways to figure out VLSM. This is it's 7 holy steps. It's just a quick way to understand it. But a lot of times it's just gonna have to have students get on the whiteboard if you've got it in the classroom. And normally, if you get the network first, I always have them go and do the broadcast next, because it's just one less than the next network. So the 190, say the second network here, the 192.168.10.64, or one less would be the broadcast of the first network. And you can do that all the way down. You get the network and broadcast, and then you can fill in what the first usable and last usable address is.
Yep.
And for students, it's just, sometimes they don't grasp it if you're talking to them, but they grasp it quicker if they do the problem themselves and write it out. Sometimes they even have to do the full 4 octets, right? That are turned on and turned off, especially when we get into ANDing. It takes a time. This is, even in earlier versions of Cisco and CCNA, VLSM, it was always troublesome. And luckily it's getting easier to kind of discuss and talk about it.
Yeah, so that's like I said, everyone, they usually have different ways of doing it. Like I said, I do my same way that Brian just stated. I like to write it out in a chart here, and usually what I do, I go ahead and create my networks first, and then I start doing the broadcast, because I know it's one less than whatever this network is. So you get your networks, you say take one away, that's going to be your broadcast. Go here, take one away, that's going to be the broadcast for the first address. So now what you just did is we created 4 different networks. So the way that it would work out on the chart is we could take this first network assigned to this interface here, and then we just use any of the usable addresses, and we can assign them to the devices, as long as it's in this same network. So now for this end, we can just take the second network that we created, assign to this interface, and then as long as we use any of the usable addresses, we can assign them to the devices. Now, in most cases, you're going to see where the first address is usually the router interface. The second address is going to be the switch virtual manager, the SVI. Then you have your PCs. So that's usually how it's done. Sometimes, like I said before, you have some companies, because if you're trying to make everything more secure, one thing could be, if I'm a hacker, if I took any Cisco course, I know that most people are going to use that first address. So I'm able to guess it in a possible address you may have on your device. So some companies would start out and use the last addresses for their router. So it just depends. But long as you're pulling from that same network, those usable addresses, everything will work.
Hey, Michael.
Yes.
When I'm going over this with my students, I normally tell them we solve for 5 different things: the network address, the first usable host, the last usable host, the broadcast address, and the range. Because within the range, as I worked for Cisco for a while, you definitely don't use the first usable host. They normally go to the 4th usable host, or they use the 8th usable host to the back, or from the back of it, they go 8 back. Just want to make sure that exactly what you said, that we try to mix it up. So it'd be harder for the hackers to figure out our gateway. Matter of fact, we changed our gateway to the 10th usable host.
Yeah, that's how it was similar where my previous location where you know we had kept everything on spreadsheet, and we would skip probably the first 10 addresses and start plugging from there. And then we had different sets that we had just for printers and stuff like that. Your static addresses that you're going to use. So,
and that's why the logical topology, when you fill it out, is very important. So you know exactly what IP address you're assigning to the devices and things of that nature. Okay.
Yeah, that's one thing with these packet tracers. If it gives you a chart to fill out, it's best to go ahead and fill out that chart before you start doing any kind of configurations, because it's easy to get mixed up, and it's very easy. Especially when you have a chart with over 10 devices, and you need IP addresses for each interface, and then you need your SVI on your switches, and you need to put your default gateway on your switches. And then also, just from looking at this diagram, so if we got, let's say we put 192.168.10.1 here, then our default gateway on this PC will be
Michael, I'm muting back, and I'm sorry. Donnie, I think, was asking the question. I don't know who it was.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm muting back.
Oh, you good?
Yeah, I was going to ask a question. Because in my particular industry, what we typically do is use a separate management network for the devices, where you can only, if you want to do any kind of management, you have to be coming from that particular network or that particular subnet. So is that not a common practice for what y'all see out there right now?
Yes, that's still common in real world scenarios, where you may put I know for our routers, we would create a loop back with a different IP address, because the thinking is that if you have your management on this interface here, if that interface goes down, then you're stuck in the water. You gotta physically get to that device in order to do any kind of changes on it. So most of them we would create like a loop back 0 and put that address from that range there just for management. So you're correct, Donnie.
Okay. And the other thing that I'm curious about is, in looking at the, and I hate the, so usually if I'm looking at the format you have here, and I love it, because it makes it easy to manually calculate. And for years, I've just cheated and gone and found like a network, a subnet calculator, and done it, right? Is there a way to, if you're looking for a certain amount of hosts, to actually manually use something like this and calculate? I'm not familiar with that.
Let me jump in there, Michael. In the course, I don't know if how far down in the course you got, but under module 11 in NetAcad, modules 11 through 13, at the bottom of that module, there's a student and IP addressing workbook. That workbook, honestly, will give you both configuring host and configuring networks. It'll give you a wide range of stuff. It will start with regular classical subnetting, and then it will jump into VLSM. One thing that I've done, and I don't know if Michael's done it in the past, is I start at the very beginning of the semester with that book, and I'll say, here's 5 points overall for your grade. If you want to complete this entire book and then turn it in anytime during the semester, it's guaranteed 5 points towards your final grade in class. I've had quite a few students take me up on that, and the ones that have done that workbook, it has been tremendously easy for them to understand and be part of the discussion when we're going over IPv4 and even IPv6 when we start talking about it. So in the NetAcad course here, we've provided both the student edition and the instructor edition for you to download and use for your future use in your classes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I made a note of that, Brian. I haven't did it before. So I'll make note of that because that subnetting part, it is a hassle in the classroom.
And it's even to the point, Michael, where I've had half a class do it and half not. And the students that completed it, once we got to chapter 11 and 12, even if we went to CCNA 6, I think that was chapter 7 or 8, I think it was. It was very beneficial for me as an instructor because I could use them as a resource. All right, your partner right next to you, when we're going over VLSM, you two work together, and we could use them as one. It opened up communication in the class, and it made the class even better. And just when students start working together, the class seems to go a lot smoother. So that worked out well for me. So I'm to the point about even requiring it. I thought about just requiring it as a for a class.
I'm make note of that because I know I have some classes coming up here in August. So yeah, I'm gonna start doing that. Yeah, because that subnetting, it seems to be the hardest thing for most students, especially for this CCNA 1. And another thing that I usually do a lot, always, like I said, when I took the CCNA test, the main thing I write down is my placeholder values and my powers of 2. Because if you're with your powers of 2, so let's say if the question was asking you need 60 hosts, then I can use my powers of 2 and say, okay, if I leave 6 host bits, I'm gonna have 62 hosts I can use. And you just subtract 2 from this number because you gotta count for your network address and your broadcast. So I usually do that, and I know that, okay, I need to borrow 2 bits because that's gonna leave me 6 host bits. So it's the different ways out there, just finding which way is more comfortable. Was there any other questions?
Michael, let me take the screen for a minute.
Okay, cool. Let me yeah.
All right.
Are you able to share, or do I have to go in?
I can share it. Yeah, share. Okay, all right. Cool. So going back and talking about what I just mentioned, what Michael has gone over is the Monday, and I'm sorry I was not in class. I don't know how much Michael said. It's been a pretty rough year for me me and my family. My brother actually had a major heart attack over the weekend, and that's why I couldn't be here Monday. But the lectures, these two pre-recorded lectures, if you've not looked at those, Kelly is the first one I think was when CCNA 6 was there. I think he did that for network addressing, and this is what Michael went over, the 7 holy steps. So if anything in what Michael discussed, whether it's class or classless VLSM, please go back and just look at these pre-recorded lectures. The workbook is here it's in modules 11 through 13. Okay, and it is this is the student edition. Me personally, if you are having any issues with VLSM and understanding it, I would try to do the student edition first. Because if you go through it as a student now, and I don't classify the class as a student, I classify all of you as instructors, but you're taking it just as a student would, taking this class for the first time or even as a repeat. Try the student edition and then use the instructor workbook just to kind of verify your answers. I can look at the answers all day long, but it doesn't sink in like it should if I actually go through the actual information. The other thing, items that, and this is for everyone that's not on the call or not on this, we are getting close to the end of the course. So we're covering chapter 11 and 12. I think we'll get into chapter 12, will be IPv6. We'll do that Monday. And then 13, again, it just kind of reverberates what we've already covered, IPv4, IPv6, using ping and trace route. Be aware that we are getting close to the end of class. Michael, it's like, what is it, August?
I think it's August 14th. And I had another question, Brian. I'm not sure if he's on here, but Gregory, someone that emailed me asking about the finals. I know it wasn't activated yet. I was going to wait till Kelly came back. I didn't want to see. I didn't know how he wanted.
We can activate them individually. So if someone's gone through all of the course and they're ready, or they've done 80% of the labs.
Okay, and
they have to do all of the chapter exams. That's our module exam. There's no choice on that. All those have to be done before we can turn it on.
Okay, cool.
We can turn them on
I'll let
individually.
them know. Okay, I'll let them know. And the skills exam, I know it has a couple.
That should be on already.
Okay.
It may have already been activated.
And do you know if he specifies what address to use, or if he?
Let's see, put it in there. Actually, hadn't put it on there yet. So. I'm having internet trouble.
No problem. No problem.
And the skills exam is going to be similar to the one in the packet tracer, because I want to go over the one in the packet tracer also.
There is a difference there, and I'll talk about it. Yeah,
Okay.
The skills assessment, the one you need to do is this one in Net Labs. So this is the modules, the regular NDP. That's multi-device, multiple device items. But this skills assessment, this essay is the actual skills assessment. Now, going back to the course for Cisco academies that don't have real gear. You don't have real gear, then the PTSA, that packet tracer skills assessment, is really good to use. You can still use it. We use it just kind of as practice. We recommend that you, as in future instructors, once we accredit you, that you take it, at least see what the skills assessment looks like. But in the skills exam, a skills assessment you take in Net Labs, use either one of the IP addresses that's there. I think there's two separate ones. It might be 192 and 168. But I will verify that and go over that again in more detail Monday. Okay. Any other questions that I missed?
I got one more question. I'm kind of ahead, but my only thing is I'm having some issues with SSH. When we're going to get to SSH with the login information, because that's what I think.
Right, so that's going to be we'll talk about that in, I think it's module 16. So
okay,
you can tell module 14 and 15 is going to be pretty quick.
Yes.
There's only a couple of labs, one packet tracer, one lab, and then the exam. So we'll probably cover IPv6. Now, Michael, we're just in, this is module 11, right?
Yeah. So Monday, I got up to just class for subnetting. So I didn't hit variable length yet.
All right. So we'll cover IPv6 this coming Monday.
Yeah.
And then Wednesday we'll hit 13, and then that following we'll try to do we'll do probably get 14 and 15 done that next week, and then 16 will be the week of August 1st, looks like.
Yeah.
But that one, SSH and figuring and doing it. What exact problems are you having?
I'm talking to mute. I went through the lab today. I went on and uploaded it anyway. I printed out the configuration that you had to do all the configuration files. I did the whole thing. I was just unable to SSH back to the switch. And I don't know what I did wrong. And I'm thinking I might have fat fingered my password or something like that. And I think that's the reason why I was doing the SSH -L with the IP address. I got to the prompt of the executive prompt, but my password did not work.
Yeah,
okay.
And I put that in my notes just in case. I did it twice. I don't think I'm going back and do it again. So
okay. Yeah. I know one issue with SSH. I know sometimes I know me, I like to use PuTTY. sometimes it defaults for version 2, and then in this course it has you doing version
Well,
1.
it asks for, you have to do the SSH version ID, and I put both
Okay.
of those in there. So they both,
Okay.
they have both versions in there for
Okay.
your lab.
Okay.
All right, cool.
All right, anything else? Let's see. The session will be recorded. Like I said, there are plenty of lectures to watch. Michael, did you share with the class that link that Kelly said for all the packet tracers with videos?
Yes, I sent it to so I sent it to the emails that I have. I didn't know if y'all that sent
Is
it
that
to
in this course? So that may be something if you can get that link and maybe put
Cool.
At the very top. Let me just show you where here. At the top of the course, we're
Yeah.
going to add a link here that said that it's actually a link to videos that align with every packet tracer in this course. So like you were talking about, Donnie, with your SSH, well, that particular packet tracer, we do have a video for it. We have another instructor that has shared a video for it that can give the exact steps, step by step to complete it. So just try to put it at the top here, Michael.
Okay.
And then we'll make sure we share that with them just as a reminder Monday.
Okay, I get that added in.
Okay. Anything else? Well, Michael, I guess that I don't know it's you. I feel like we're going to be losing power here in just a minute. So,
Oh, it's coming, man. We just
Yeah.
had a big one. So, guys, good luck.
well, I don't like cutting class short, but I like to give everybody an opportunity. I know, Michael, I'm just jumping in here, and I'm sorry, Michael.
Oh no, you good. I appreciate
But
it.
we're going to go ahead and we're going to stop the recording now, and then